China is now jumping in on adding tariffs to Canada. You also have every single province in Canada is having a retaliatory response to America for goods that they are trading. It's just getting out of hand. And then you also have a little bit of good news. We're in the 24-hour countdown of Justin Trudeau no longer being prime minister of this country, no longer doing any sort of press conference, no longer being in the spotlight or representing Canada to any capacity. So there is some good news coming out of this, but at the same time, then we're going to evolve to Trudeau 2.0, which is Mark Carney, who is substantially worse. So brace yourselves. This is going to be a very ugly week. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And once you are subscribed, there's a little bell icon. If you can just do me a favor and click and tap that, it adds a layer of insurance so you can actually be notified of upcoming videos. It's no surprise that mainstream media is trying to suppress people, but now I know the government, literally in the news, is trying to suppress me by doing slander campaigns. So yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Oh yeah. I don't like being used for political pawn. I'll tell you that. I'm going to sit right here and make my videos. But speaking of video, let's get into today, shall we? Starting off with China. China hits back at Canada with fresh agriculture tariffs. China announces tariffs on over $2.6 billion US worth of Canadian agricultural and food products on Saturday, retaliating against Levi's Auto introduced in October and opening a new front in a trade war largely driven by the United States President Trump's tariff threats. The levies announced by the Commerce Ministry are and scheduled to take effect on March 20th match the 100% and 25% import duties Canada slapped on China-made electric vehicles and steel and aluminum products just over 4 months ago. This is getting nasty. This is getting really out of hand. Every single country wants to somehow, I don't know, combat inflation or fudge the numbers, but it seems like everyone is just taxing each other, and it's very much getting out of hand. And you and I are going to be paying this cost, which is, again, not something that I voted for, not something that you voted for. It's not what any of us want. And speaking of what not any of us want, there's a lot of uproar in Alberta because Premier of Alberta Danielle Smith was trying to bridge the gap between the tariffs, the threats of them, and them actually now being placed with Donald Trump and Canada, and saying, hey, come on, President. Come on, this is Alberta. We're like the North. What are you doing? But she's given up that, right? She's no longer playing nice guy or nice gal, and she is having a reciprocal response to the tariff. So let's take a look at that.
Premier is continuing tariff retaliation regardless of a nearly 1 month long pause announced by the White House. Danielle Smith says it's still unclear what goods the pause applies to. She's vowing Alberta's response will remain in place until all threats and tariffs have stopped. As CTV's Shaylan Skalski explains, the economic uncertainty has some experts worried about business leaving.
It's broken a trust between our two nations in a profound way.
Danielle Smith confirmed Friday her government is moving ahead with retaliation regardless of the tariff pause. Shortly after implementing tariffs, Trump signed an executive order pausing tariffs for Canadian goods under the free trade agreement until April 2nd. Smith had already announced Alberta's tariff response, including fulfilling government contracts with countries honoring Canada's trade agreements, banning the sale of U.S. alcohol or VLTs, launching a Buy Alberta campaign, and reducing trade barriers within Canada.
I know that some businesses have been taking USA-made products off the shelf, and so they're kind of self-governing that. I don't think there'll be an actual policing model to follow that buy local or buy Albertan or buy Canadian.
The president of Alberta Municipalities doesn't think the province's plan will create challenges for local governments. One economist disagrees.
The cost of running government is going to get more expensive. There's no way around it.
Moshe Lander questions the effectiveness of banning U.S. liquor and fears some businesses may bow out of our province amid
I mean, they're doing the same thing in British Columbia. They've already ripped off the shelves every single American liquor, wine, spirits, whatever, right? Like, and the same thing in Ontario. It seems like such a ridiculous thing that our country is doing. We don't even get an option, right? Like, what if you prefer American beer or American liquor? You don't get an option anymore. The government's it's this whole COVID mentality again. This is the way it's going to be, and you have no choice but to accept it. And if you oppose it, you're an extremist. You're crazy. Oh my goodness, man. Flashbacks. 5 years ago, folks. 5 years ago. That's when it happened. That's when it started. Getting immediate flashbacks.
Economic uncertainty.
Maybe Canadian businesses just decide to relocate. While that might be good for their business, it can be bad for what's left behind if it's job losses.
It's a fear I've had for 5 years. It's a fear that was reignited in March when Trump took the GOP nomination.
Trade expert Carlo Dade warns provincial and federal leaders can no longer trust the U.S. to honor future agreements, and says leaders need to be rethinking the strategy for the next 203 weeks of Trump's reign and beyond.
We're in for a generation of unprecedented change in the U.S., and the only thing that we can do is to get smarter about understanding that.
Smith will travel to Houston next week to lobby U.S. officials. Shailan Skolsky, CTV News, Edmonton.
Yeah, I think this is getting a little out of hand, folks. A little out of hand. Nobody wants this. I personally, I'm not that picky about what I drink. I actually drink Alberta vodka, right? I pour a little bit in a glass. I add some tap water in there. I'm a pretty simple guy. And when I go to a bar, they always mess it up because they add their own little lemon or lime juice spritz in it, and they use bubbly water. I just like tap water, bro. It's pretty simple. So them removing liquor off the shelves that's not Canadian doesn't personally affect me, but I know it pisses a lot of people off. And I know that what the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, what she's been doing has been kind of brushing people the wrong way. So just let me know down in the comments how you feel about this. Are you for this type of response in Alberta? Are you against it? Let me know your reasoning why. And now we're going to take a look here at the electricity surcharge that the fat pig Doug Ford, well, rather the mindset of a fat pig Doug Ford. Careful, don't end up on CTV again in a bad way. The fat pig Doug Ford, who acts like he's got some rabies. He's a crazy guy. Now he's, it seems like he's not cutting off the electricity, but he's adding a surcharge specifically to New York. So let's take a look.
Ontario's leadership is moving forward with an additional surcharge for electricity that they export to New York. This is all in response to tariffs implemented by President Trump.
For more on this, we're joined live by CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe in Toronto. Ed, you spoke with Ontario Premier Doug Ford this week. He says he had no choice on these tariffs.
That's right. Ontario, of course, big neighbor to the north, and happens to send electricity into New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. He says this past week he called the governors of those states to warn them a tariff goes into effect on Monday unless President Trump completely stops this trade war. Take a listen.
The last thing I want to do is turn out the lights. I'll put a tariff. But let's straighten this out.
And to the American homeowner in Minnesota or New York or somewhere else that gets its power from electricity,
yes,
they're going to see the electric bill in a month and they're going to realize, whoa,
yes,
a lot more expensive than it was.
That's
what
correct.
You're telling.
Well, that's a bit of a different response than cutting off the power. See, now it's no longer a act of war or a war crime. Now he's leaning into the trade war. So I'm not saying that this is better or that this is good. Actually, I am saying this is better, but I'm not saying this is good. This makes a lot more sense, and I don't agree with this at all. I think that this whole thing of doing Canada, 25% tariffs, matching America's tariffs, look, man, it's going to happen regardless. So who gives a shit what I think, right? I'm just sitting behind a camera making videos, calling people fat pigs, but rolling back on your idea of wanting to cut off power to 1.4 million homes, that's good. At least he's not doing that. Charge 25% more. Okay. I mean, is that better? Yeah, that's way better because at least people are still going to have power. It sucks. This is a trade war. I don't agree with it, but I do think that it's a better approach than literally cutting off the power. So good job, Ford. You're a freaking still an idiot in my books.
what he's going to tell him is it's President Trump's fault and that he's sorry that they may be feeling the pain. But if you have any concerns about that, you should be calling your governor, he said, your representatives in Congress to tell the White House to back off.
You know, Ed, I know that you're there in Toronto. You obviously spoke to the Premier. Curious if you've been speaking to Canadians and what their opinions are about what's going on.
To a person, Christine, it's quite striking. They are angry about this. They're shocked, confused. A few people nearly broke into tears talking about it. They're just so disappointed and in some cases really scared about the possibility that this is going to wreak economic pain on both countries. And then there's the president's talk about making Canada a 51st state. This country, for the most part, laughed it off in the beginning, but given how much he keeps talking about it and given that he got so close to launching this tariff war, which may start again now next month instead, they say, who are we to not believe that perhaps he really is serious about trying to annex Canada and make it part of the United States? They say if it comes to that, they're ready to fight. These are words, these are feelings, Christine, that I don't think any New Yorker, someone who grew up upstate, or any other American really would ever think Canadians would feel. And they make clear it's nothing personal towards Americans. It's all about the American president and the policy he's putting in place.
Yeah, it is unusual for Canadians to feel this way or to show any anger. They're always so friendly, and we've lived so seamlessly with each other for so much.
Look, it's just not going to happen, okay? You know, as time goes on, now the shock and awe of it all has kind of dwindled out. How the hell is Canada ever going to become the 51st state? I know people argue we're not a sovereign country, not even a real country, right? Says Elon Musk, and then he takes the tweet back and deletes it. Look, logistically, it's a nightmare. It doesn't make any sense. We're on a completely different monetary system, so you'd have to match our dollar. The buyout for that would be trillions or hundreds of billions of dollars. You can't just do that. Like, it's just not going to happen. It would be so expensive and so logistically complicated. I just don't ever see Canada being, not anytime soon. We're not a war-torn country. If you're a war-torn country, it's a little bit different. You're a little bit more vulnerable to being annexed, right? But Canada, it's a completely functioning country. I know our government's extremely dysfunctional, but we're not going to be the 51st state. It's just not going to happen. So him saying that, it just bugs the Canadian media. It gives them some content. It pisses off the Liberals. People are going out and they're buying Canadian flags. That's great. All it took for the Liberals to be actually patriotic was for another country, a foreign president to say that he's going to annex Canada and make constant jokes about it. Oh, he's serious about it. He's serious. It's not going to happen. How the hell is it going to happen? Nobody has a roadmap for this. It's not going to happen. I know a lot of people that watch these videos want it to happen, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So for the time being, Canada's going to remain Canada. And for only 24 hours left, Canada is under this guy's ruling. And this clip, I wasn't able to watch it. I was dealing with, the media attacking me and stuff. Trudeau cried. He cried. He teared up during his announcement in Ottawa. And this is a huge clip. Oh, my goodness. 2 days ago, 1.1 million views on CTV. Holy smokes. Let's take a look.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government, we will not let Canadians down today and long into the future. Because in the past few weeks, we've been working with our provincial and territorial partners to make sure that families can rely on this system, not just for years to come, but will allow this system to lock in, to become something that no government, a year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, could ever go back on. And it's hard to do. Because there is nothing one government can't do that can't be undone by the following government. Unless Canadians are very clear on the need to keep this going. So we are going to make sure that more Canadians over the coming years understand that childcare is a foundational building block of what it means to be Canadian, like healthcare or social programs or cheering at a Canadian anthem.
Or booing an American anthem, according to you.
We have great news to share. We've reached a deal with 11 of 13 provinces and territories to extend current early learning and childcare agreements until March 2031.
Well, the tears really got sucked back into his eyes pretty fast there, didn't they? Holy smokes, man. He was getting really emotional, and all of a sudden it's really dry over there. I kind of agree to a certain extent, right? That something that does make Canada great, and you may disagree with this, okay? But the fact that our healthcare is embedded into our taxes and you don't pay. I've had 2 kids, man. I've had 2 kids. I didn't pay nothing. I didn't swipe my credit card other than parking when my wife gave birth to our 2 kids. That's incredible here in Canada. I agree with that system to a certain extent. It's extremely flawed right now. It's very flawed. There's a lot of provincial and territorial borders that lock healthcare professionals into a certain area, and it demotivates them from moving around. It's not transient, right? That's a huge issue. Huge, along with many other things. And they're too long to list right now. That's not the point of this particular video. Maybe I'll make a dedicated healthcare crisis problem video, in the coming weeks or whatever on this channel. But the issue that I do think, or that I'm trying to get a point, or the point that I'm trying to make, is that Canada's culture, like our social programs, are good. They're supposed to be good. It's actually a really good part of Canada, right? Healthcare, we don't pay that separately. We should have also privatized healthcare, a 2-tier system, right? We should have medical tourism. Like, there's way more that we should be doing. But the concept of what we're doing ain't that freaking bad. And I'm proud as a Canadian that we have that I can get my wife pregnant again, and we can go have a 3rd kid, and I'm not worried about the upfront cost, the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 hospital bill for her to go into labor and to deliver our child. Like, that's never been a thought. So that on its own makes this country pretty good. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to everybody. And that's also like, you have a kid and then it's done. And so where's the rest of the money going in our healthcare system? Look, it's extremely flawed, but there are some very good pros about our current medical field right now in our system. But it's super flawed. And I hope that as time goes on, we can cut through all of the crap and get down to social programs actually working without a backlog, without being bogged down from just government incompetence, which is pretty much what it's come down to right now. I don't know if Mark Carney can fix it. I don't know. I don't think so. Can Pierre Poilievre fix it? Well, I think a lot of Canadians, most Canadians who are ready to vote, are willing to gamble on that. So that's a step in the right direction. Next up here, you have CTV claiming that President Trump keeps moving the goalposts in terms of the tariff demand. So let's take a look at this.
And all the economic uncertainty appears to be putting a serious chill on the Canadian labor market. New jobs figures show employers largely paused hiring plans last month. The unemployment rate remained virtually unchanged at 6.6%. There was a minimal gain of just 1,100 jobs across the country, falling significantly short of expectations. They say a week is a long time in politics, but for Canadians trying to make sense of Donald Trump's trade war, it feels as though this week is never ending. The threat of tariffs started over border security issues and the fight against fentanyl. But as time passes, those concerns don't cover the whole story. CTV's Mike Licatore joins us from Ottawa now. And Mike, you've been covering this story since the very beginning. So what do you make of where we are at now?
Yeah, Heather, I look back to that. It's only been 46 days since Donald Trump has been in office. And in that time, the goalposts have shifted considerably. As you mentioned, this all started with concerns over the border. But now we are hearing through sources within the Canadian government that on these calls, Donald Trump often rails about other grievances he has with the Canadian government and the trade deal that we have, supply management in our dairy sector, the digital sales tax. He has even gone so far on that February 3rd call to bring up the Treaty of 1908, which is the one that drew the border between Canada and the United States, saying that he could undo it at a moment's notice. He's also talked about how much he wants control of Canadian waters and how he wants to, and he said this publicly as well, or that he could take Canada by economic force and basically look at us being annexed as a 51st state. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has pushed back on this a number of occasions, and he said that he's kind of gotten used to it over time, understanding this is how you deal with somebody like Donald Trump. And he had said conventionally on these international deals you look for a win-win, but somebody like Trump, who has a background in real estate, is oftentimes looking for a win-lose, with the U.S. being the winner. Heather.
Mike, it all sounds like a mounting existential threat.
But it's not going to happen, right? Like, all these people are saying, oh, Canada's freaked out and our leaders are freaked out about the constant threats of being annexed. Not one single person can actually lay out a real tangible plan on how that would really work. Nobody, no analyst, nobody, because it's never been done before. It's not going to happen. Now, can he rename the Gulf of America or from the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America? Yeah, absolutely. Can he retake the Panama Canal? I mean, that's a little bit logistically complicated, but that's a port, right? It's not a country. Can he take Greenland? He could probably do something with the ports. I don't know. Maybe some money, royalties go back into their economy. I'm not sure, but he can't just take Canada. Like, it's just not going to happen. Fast forward 6 months and Canada's a 51st state. Oh boy.
For Canada at a time when the Prime Minister, as you mentioned, is leaving in a few days. So what will you be watching for in the week ahead?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see who wins the Liberal leadership and becomes the Prime Minister. You have somebody like Mark Carney, who does have a lot of experience in being in large international meetings. You have Chrystia Freeland. She's got experience going head-to-head with somebody like Donald Trump and Donald Trump himself. And then Karina Gould, who has a lot of debate experience in the House of Commons. Frank Baylis, the last one on that list, who is a seasoned businessman. So I think it'll be interesting to see whoever the next Prime Minister is and how they will position themselves against Donald Trump. Heather.
Mike Locatour joining us from Ottawa. Thanks.
I mean, I don't think any of those Liberals have the rap sheet to be able to properly go up against Trump, right? I mean, it seems like Mark Carney is going to be selected for this race or for this leadership bid. I don't know how he's going to properly negotiate against Trump. I know a lot of normies out there, a lot of people that just watch mainstream media actually like Mark Carney because he used to be a banker and he was the Bank of Canada Governor General, like what Tiff Macklem is doing right now. He's on our money from way back in the day, from 2008. And so I don't know. I think that we're going through very turbulent times, and I just wish we could go back in time and have actually had the election through the vote of non-confidence and it been successful right before the Christmas break. I feel like we would be just a lot more at ease, and who knows, we may not even have the threat of tariffs under a conservative government. There's that whole side of the conspiracy piece as well, right? Maybe Trump is doing this to add pressure to the Liberals so that they implode and so that we can have a conservative government. Then all of a sudden everything drops and Canada can go back to having good relations with America. Whether that's true or not, I have absolutely no idea, but I'd like to pass the question off to you. How do you feel about that? Do you think that we won't have a trade war with America if Pierre is in power, especially with the majority? Let me know your guys' thoughts and comments down below. That is the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you guys later on. Bye for now.
Mr. Sunshine Baby, Sunshine Baby, Sunshine, 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 Shine, 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 Baby.
Na 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 na, na 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 na. Hey, Goodbye. Goodbye.